My roommate's door was always locked. Always. Until the night I found it cracked open and saw the photos covering his walls. Photos of me, sleeping. When I was 21, I moved into a rental house with 3 other guys. None of us knew each other before, but the rent was cheap and it was close to work, so we all took the chance. For the first few weeks, everything seemed normal. We had game nights, shared dinners, the usual roommate stuff. But there was one guy, Bryce, who always kept to himself. He wasn't rude or anything, just distant, quiet. His bedroom door was always locked, even when he was home. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone needs their privacy, right? But then I started noticing things. Late at night, I'd hear strange noises coming from his room. Faint dragging sounds, muffled thuds. And the second I got close to his door, everything would stop. Complete silence. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps right outside my door. I lay there frozen for a moment, listening. Then I cracked my door open just enough to look out. Bryce was standing in the dark hallway, completely still, facing my room. I whispered his name. Bryce? He didn't answer. He just slowly turned his head toward me, then walked back to his room and shut the door behind him. I stood there in the dark, my heart pounding, trying to make sense of what just happened. The next morning, I asked him if he was up late. He just smiled and said, "You must have dreamed it." After that, things felt different, off. Bryce started leaving for days at a time without telling anyone where he was going. When he came back, he looked exhausted. His eyes were sunken, his hands shaking. He stopped making eye contact, and that smell started coming from his room. Damp, sour, like something rotting. One weekend, the other guys went on a trip. I had the house to myself, or at least I thought I did. Around midnight, I heard it again, that scraping sound coming from Bryce's room. I stepped out into the hallway and froze. His door was cracked open. For the first time since we'd moved in, his door was actually open. I stood there for a long moment, debating whether I should look. Part of me wanted to go back to my room and pretend I didn't see anything, but I couldn't. I had to know. I pushed the door open slowly. The smell hit me first. It was overwhelming. Then I turned on my flashlight. The walls were covered with photos, dozens of them. Photos of us. Me, sleeping in my bed. The other guys sitting in the living room. Pictures taken from outside our windows. Some were blurry, like they'd been taken in a hurry. Others were clear, too clear. Then I saw the most recent one. It was me, that night, standing in the hallway, looking at his door. My blood went cold. I backed up toward the doorway, my hands shaking. That's when I heard his voice behind me. "You weren't supposed to see that." I didn't think. I just ran. I bolted out of that house barefoot. Didn't even grab my phone or keys. I ran to a neighbor's and called the police from there. When they arrived, Bryce was gone. His room was empty. The photos were still on the walls, but he had taken everything else. His clothes, his laptop, even his mattress. Like he knew I would find it eventually and had an escape plan ready. None of us ever saw him again. The landlord said he never heard from him either. No forwarding address, no explanation, just gone. But sometimes, late at night, I still wonder if he's out there, watching someone else, taking pictures, waiting for them to open the wrong door. I broke my lease and lost my entire deposit just to get away from my roommate. Not because she was loud or messy, but because of what she whispered outside my locked door at 3 a.m. Last year, I needed a roommate fast. My lease was about to start, and I couldn't afford the place on my own. So I did what everyone does. I posted on one of those roommate finder sites and waited. That's how I met Lily. She responded within hours. Her message was polite, well written. She had references, a steady job. She seemed perfect, honestly. We met for coffee, talked for maybe 30 minutes, and she seemed quiet, a little shy, but completely normal. We signed the lease 2 days later. For the first few weeks, everything was fine. Better than fine, actually. We split chores evenly, cooked together sometimes, watched movies on weekends. I remember thinking I'd gotten lucky, that I'd found the perfect roommate. Then, slowly, things started to change. It started with the nighttime wandering. I'd wake up around 2 or 3 a.m. to use the bathroom, and I'd see her standing in the hallway, just standing there, staring at the wall, not moving, not blinking. The first time it happened, I asked if she was okay. She turned to me slowly, smiled this strange, empty smile, and walked back to her room without saying a word. I told myself she was sleepwalking, that it was harmless, but it kept happening, night after night. Then she started pacing. I'd lie in bed and hear her footsteps circling the living room, around and around, for hours. No phone, no TV, just silence and the soft sound of her bare feet brushing against the carpet. I tried to ignore it. I put in earplugs. I turned on white noise, but I could still feel it, that constant movement just beyond my door. One morning, I woke up and opened my bedroom door to find all of my things from the kitchen sitting in a neat pile right there. My mugs, my plates, even the cereal box I'd opened the day before. Everything stacked carefully outside my room. When I asked her why, she didn't even look up from her coffee. She just said, "They were in my space." Her voice was completely calm, emotionless, like she was commenting on the weather. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I locked my bedroom door. I felt ridiculous doing it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that she was getting worse. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to whispering, soft, rhythmic whispering right outside my door. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like she was repeating something over and over, like a chant. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Then I heard it. The doorknob started to turn, slowly, gently, testing it. I held my breath, staring at that doorknob in the dark. It turned all the way, then stopped when it hit the lock. There was a long pause. Then, in the quietest voice, I heard her say, "You're in my room again." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there frozen, listening to her footsteps retreat down the hallway. The next morning, I got up early. I was exhausted, paranoid, and I needed to talk to her, to figure out what was happening. Maybe she was having some kind of breakdown. Maybe she needed help. But when I walked past her bedroom, I stopped. Her door was wide open. It was never open. I looked inside, and my stomach dropped. The room was completely empty. Her bed was gone. Her clothes, her furniture, even her toothbrush from the bathroom. It was like she had never lived there at all. I checked the lease. Her name was still on it. I called her phone. It went straight to voicemail. I even messaged her old references. No one had heard from her. I left that apartment 2 days later. Broke the lease. Lost my deposit. I didn't care. I couldn't stay there. But here's the thing that still keeps me up at night. A few weeks after I moved out, I was scrolling through that same roommate finder site, and I saw her profile again. Same photo, same polite message, same references, looking for a new roommate. I reported the profile. It was taken down. But sometimes I wonder how many people responded to that ad. How many people let her move in, and what happened to them when she started pacing at night. I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of heavy breathing next to my bed. When I turned on the light, my landlord was crouched there, staring at me. He ran before I could scream. The next morning, he offered me coffee and smiled like nothing had happened. Back in 2019, I was looking for a cheap place to rent. I'd just started a new job and didn't have much saved up. A friend told me her cousin Mark had a basement suite available, and the price was almost too good to be true. When I went to see it, the place was actually nice. Clean, quiet, private entrance. And Mark seemed pretty chill. Mid-30s, worked from home, kept to himself. I moved in 2 weeks later. For the first month, everything was perfect. Mark mostly stayed upstairs. I'd see him maybe once or twice a week when he came down to check the furnace or grab something from the storage room. We'd exchange pleasantries, and that was it. I thought I'd found the perfect setup. Then things started to change. Mark started coming downstairs more often. At first, it was just to check on things. The water heater, the electrical panel, normal landlord stuff. But then he started lingering. He'd knock on my door, and before I could even answer, he'd already be stepping inside. The questions started getting weird. He'd ask things like, "Do you ever feel like someone's watching you down here?" Or, "Do you lock your door when you sleep?" He'd say it casually, like he was making small talk. But something about the way he asked made my skin crawl. I started locking my door every night. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then one afternoon, I came home from work and noticed things in my room looked different. Not obviously moved, but slightly off. My laptop was at a different angle on my desk. My closet door was open a crack when I always kept it closed. I convinced myself I was imagining it, that I'd just forgotten. But then I found the camera. It was tiny, tucked behind a smoke detector in the corner of my bedroom. I only noticed it because the little red light blinked once while I was lying in bed. My blood went cold. I didn't touch it. I didn't confront him. I just tried to act normal while I figured out what to do. That night, I barely slept. I kept my lights on, my door locked, and I pushed my dresser against it for good measure. Around 3 a.m., I finally started to drift off. Then I heard it, breathing. Slow, heavy breathing that wasn't mine. I froze. My eyes shot open, and I lay there in the dark, listening. It was close. Too close. right next to my bed. I reached over and turned on the lamp. And there he was, Mark, crouched beside my bed, staring right at me. His face was blank, emotionless, like he'd been watching me sleep for who knows how long. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he bolted. He scrambled to his feet and ran out of my room, slamming the door behind him. I heard his footsteps pounding up the stairs. I sat there shaking, my heart racing so fast I thought I was going to pass out. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just sat there with my back against the wall, waiting for morning. The next morning, I heard him moving around upstairs like nothing had happened. Around 9 a.m., he knocked on my door. I didn't answer. He knocked again, then opened it anyway. He was holding 2 cups of coffee, smiling like we were old friends. "Thought you might want some," he said. His voice was cheerful, normal, like he hadn't been crouched beside my bed in the middle of the night. I told him I was moving out. He didn't argue. He just nodded, still smiling, and said, "That's probably for the best." I started packing immediately. I wanted to be out of there before dark. While I was grabbing the last of my things, I noticed something behind the basement stairs. A small wooden box I'd never seen before. It was tucked into the corner, half hidden by old paint cans. I opened it, and I wish I hadn't. Inside were my things, my old toothbrush, a few socks I thought I'd lost in the laundry, a hair tie, and a lock of my hair, taped to a page torn from one of my notebooks. The page had my handwriting on it, a grocery list I'd written weeks ago. I dropped the box and left. I didn't pack the rest of my things. I didn't ask for my damage deposit back. I just got in my car and drove. I never spoke to Mark again. I never even told my friend what happened. I was too embarrassed, too scared she wouldn't believe me. But a few months later, I saw a post in a local housing group. Someone was asking if anyone had rented from a guy named Mark. They said he'd been acting strange, coming into their room uninvited, asking weird questions. I messaged them privately and told them to get out. I don't know if they listened. If you've ever had a creepy roommate or landlord experience, drop your story in the comments below. You're not alone, and your story might help someone else recognize the warning signs. And if this gave you chills, hit that subscribe button because I post new, true horror stories every week. Stay safe out there.